Come with me to the promise. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, as the Israelites wandered in the desert under the watchful eye of the Almighty, Joshua, the son of Nun, walked closely with Moses. Day by day, they traversed the rugged terrains of Sinai, where the cries of discontent echoed among the multitudes encamped around them. Before Joshua, Moses stood as a towering figure marked by divine encounters, his face often aglow with the radiance of God's glory. The weight of their arduous journey pressed heavily upon Moses, and Joshua sensed the burdens he carried. Each complaint from the people weighed like a stone upon his heart. The harshness of the wilderness served as a constant reminder of their past failures, but amidst the unyielding terrain, Joshua gleaned profound lessons of faith and resilience. He watched as Moses, amidst the rumblings of discontent, sought the face of God with unwavering commitment. The sun rose and fell, marking their days in the wilderness, and under the vast expanse of the heavens, Moses taught Joshua that true leadership was not an entitlement. It was forged in humility and unyielding faithfulness. One evening, as dusk fell and bathed the camp in hues of crimson and gold, an unexpected stillness descended. Joshua felt the ground tremble gently beneath his feet, an almost sacred invitation. "Come with me to the promise," a voice echoed within him, igniting his heart with anticipation, as though the very earth spoke a secret message. In that moment, the weight of destiny enveloped him, a profound realization that a transition was drawing near. Turning, Moses caught Joshua's eye. Sorrow and resolution mingled upon his weathered face. The old prophet knew that the time was fast approaching for his leadership to pass to his faithful aide. "Be strong and courageous," he had once instructed with fervor, reinforcing the promise that God would never abandon them, Deuteronomy 31:7-8. Now Joshua felt the gravity of that decree settle upon his spirit, the mantle of leadership inching closer. Yet soon after, a palpable fear swept through the camp. Whispers of a formidable enemy lurking near their promised land ignited panic among the people. The cries of distress saturated the air, yet within Joshua, the stirring of the Spirit ignited courage, drawing him back to the wisdom of his mentor. "Be strong and courageous," he recalled fervently, anchoring his heart amidst chaos. He was to guide a fractured people into the land, flowing with milk and honey, yet the path before him felt perilous and uncertain. As dawn broke the next day, they approached the raging Jordan River, the waters swelling as if daring them to cross. Despair threatened to overtake Joshua. An insurmountable barrier lay before the people, their resolve tested by the mighty waters. A truth resonated in his spirit, a call to claim the land promised to their forefathers. Standing on the brink, Joshua faced his ultimate test of faith. Would he summon the courage to lead them forth, despite the daunting task ahead? Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Joshua stood poised at the river's edge, filled with a mix of longing and trepidation. As the waters swirled violently before him, a promise hung lingering in the air. God would not abandon his people, nor his covenant. All at once, a surge of courage washed over him. He felt an undeniable stirring, a divine whisper calling him to act and lead them into the promise that was so closely knit with their destiny. It was here, at this pivotal moment, with uncertainty converging, that Joshua prepared to step into his divine calling. The journey ahead was fraught with perils, yet the hope of an inheritance awaited those willing to respond in faith. Me to the promise. In that sacred moment at the Jordan's edge, Joshua felt a greater urgency wash over him. The sun rose with a relentless fire, illuminating the waters that surged before him. Questions stirred in his heart, doubt and hope entwined. Yet within, God's promise echoed like a mighty wind, urging him to act. Joshua turned to the assembled leaders, whose faces were etched with fear and uncertainty. "Hear me, O children of Israel," he proclaimed, his voice echoing like a trumpet across the banks of the tumultuous river. "The Lord our God has commanded us to cross over this Jordan. It is he who has gone before us, and just as he parted the Red Sea, so shall he part these waters for us." Joshua 3:10-11. The crowd, still trembling with apprehension, began to murmur. Some recalled the stories of deliverance from Egypt, while others hesitated, clinging to their doubts like a shield. Yet Joshua spoke again, steadfast and bold. "Remember the covenant that he made with our forefathers. The land flowing with milk and honey is our inheritance, and today we shall not allow fear to hold us back from the promise that awaits." Then he cast his eyes upon the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred symbol of God's enduring presence among them. With trembling hands he pointed toward it and said, "Let the priests bear the ark and step into the waters, for when the soles of their feet touch the brink, the waters will be cut off from flowing." With a shared breath of divine anticipation, the priests arose, their hearts ready to obey. They approached the bank, their feet near the raging waters, and Joshua, with a heart full of faith, prayed fervently, "O Lord, mighty in battle, we stand before you, a people called by your name. Deliver us as you promised. Let us cross over into the land that you have set aside for our inheritance." As the priests stepped into the swollen river, the ground beneath them shuddered. Suddenly, an unearthly silence fell over the camp, and an incomprehensible sight unfurled. The waters of the Jordan, which raged against them, began to part before their eyes. A path dry as dust emerged, stretching wide, inviting them to walk through the tumult with firm assurance. Joshua 3:15-16. With courage ignited, the people followed the priests, their hearts racing within them as they crossed the Jordan, each step a step of faithful obedience. Mothers grasped their children tightly, fathers raised their heads high, and the moment stretched like eternity, a divine affirmation of God's presence among them. As they reached the opposite bank, the air filled with shouts of joy and praise. "God has led us here! God is among us!" they declared, for the sound of the Lord's deliverance resounded not just in their ears, but in their hearts. Joshua 4:24. Joshua stood, watching the last of the Israelites cross over. He felt as if the weight of the past had lifted, replaced by the glorious truth of the future. Yet even amid victory, a whisper of divine purpose remained at the edges of his heart, a promise yet unfulfilled, a call to deeper courage and faith. In this moment of triumph, God's sovereign hand signaled another test. The Lord spoke to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, 1 from each tribe, and take stones from the Jordan." And Joshua, filled with both wonder and resolve, knew the task ahead was steeped in meaning. For with each stone they set, a reminder would rise, a legacy pointing back to the faithfulness of God. A call for generations yet to come to remember how he had made a way where there seemed to be none. Would they trust in faith yet unknown? For their journey was only beginning as the land of promise beckoned on the horizon. But what became evident was that greater challenges lay ahead, fierce battles awaited them, and with it the fulfillment of God's greater purpose. "Us, O Israel, to remember and to testify of the works of the Lord," so Joshua commanded, and the 12 men from each tribe gathered near the riverbank, their hearts beating in rhythm with the unfolding plan of God. They were entrusted with stones, 12 representing the unity and faithfulness of the tribes, each one heavy with the history of their deliverance. As the first man stepped forward, he knelt beside the dry riverbed and raised his hand. "This stone," he declared, will stand as a memorial to our crossing, a testament to the faithfulness of Yahweh. And as he lifted it, the very ground seemed to echo his proclamation. The others followed suit, each testimony weaving a tapestry of remembrance among the children of Israel. One by one, they positioned the stones upon the banks, an altar signifying faith made tangible, a tangible reminder of God's promises that would endure through generations yet unborn. Joshua 4:3. With the stones set, Joshua turned his gaze upward, his heart alight with the wonders of God. Let this stand, he said to the assembly, that when your children ask, what do these stones mean? You shall tell them of how the Lord with a mighty hand brought us over the Jordan, parting the waters as he did before. As the words hung in the air, a sacred stillness enveloped the people, bowing their heads in humble reverence. Though their journey to Canaan had been fraught with trials, each stone echoed with God's faithfulness, reminders of his everlasting covenant, a testimony for the generations to come. Joshua 4:21-22. Then the Lord spoke again to Joshua, saying, Command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant to come up from the Jordan. And so, with a heart of expectancy, Joshua summoned the priests from the riverbed, where they had stood steadfast in their obedience. Once they emerged, the waters resumed their flow with a mighty rush, returning as if they'd never parted. The eyes of the people, filled with awe, witnessed the power of God once again. The mountains echoed their praise, and the very earth trembled in recognition of the Almighty. As the day wore on, rejoicing filled the land. The Israelites offered peace offerings unto the Lord, their hearts united in gratitude, for he had led them across the Jordan in triumph. They camped at Gilgal, a site destined to be eternally remembered for the miracles and memories birthed there. Joshua 4:19. Yet as Joshua looked upon the encampment, he sensed a stirring in his spirit, as if the Lord was preparing them for the great conquests ahead. He remembered the fierce battles that lay before them, and the daunting tasks that would challenge their faith. Yet he held firm to the knowledge that the one who had parted the waters would lead them through every challenge they would face. The whispers of divine purpose rekindled. For I will not forsake you, the Lord had promised to Joshua. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Joshua 1:5. And so Joshua knew that their true test was just beginning. Would they live in the light of God's promises, taking each step in faith fortified by remembrance and trust? As the sun dipped below the horizon, Joshua turned toward the gathered assembly and declared, We stand on holy ground, united by faith, to pursue what awaits us. We have seen the Lord's hand. He has brought us here not for our comfort alone, but to fulfill his marvelous plan. But just as these words took flight, a distant rumble broke through the peace, a gentle reminder that the land was alive with both promise and peril. God's sovereign plan unfurled before them. What more would come to light as they stepped into the fullness of the inheritance ahead? As the dawn broke over Gilgal, a golden light illuminated the encampment, and the hearts of the Israelites swelled with hope. For they had witnessed the miraculous, the flowing waters of the Jordan that had surrendered to the commands of the Almighty. Yet, with each passing hour, the weight of their calling pressed upon Joshua. He knew the day was fast approaching when they would take their first steps into the land promised to their ancestors. "Sanctify yourselves," Joshua called to the assembly, a flicker of urgency in his voice. "For tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among us." Joshua 3:5. The words were laden with anticipation. The people, stirred by the prophetic sound, gathered their hearts to seek after the Lord, preparing to witness the fulfillment of his word. In the hush of the morning, as families prayed and worshipped, the Spirit hovered like the gentle mist upon the earth. Each family called upon the name of the Lord, recounting the deliverance from Egypt, the plagues, the parting of the Red Sea, and now this, the parting of the Jordan. The stories woven throughout generations filled the air, a chorus of faith that ignited the embers of trust. Joshua ascended a low hill to survey the land before them. The city of Jericho loomed, its high walls a daunting sight, fortified against unknown threats. "O Lord, what shall we do?" he whispered, looking heavenward. In that transitory moment, as he awaited divine instruction, the Lord spoke. "See, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and mighty men of valor." Joshua 6:2. With renewed strength, Joshua descended and gathered the warriors of Israel. "The Lord has delivered our enemy into our hands, though the path will be unlike anything we have imagined. We will not charge against the city as men do. Instead, we shall march around Jericho. For on the seventh day the walls shall fall." A murmur arose among the men, filled with both disbelief and exhilaration. "This is our fight. Are we to march in silence?" they asked. "Have we not come prepared for battle?" Joshua, feeling the weight of leadership, raised his hand. "We are not to fight as the world fights. The Lord is our banner. He demands us to trust in his command, and we shall shout with joy when the time is right." Joshua 6:10. The obedient march began. Day by day they circled the city, the priests leading with the ark, and the people following in faith. Silence enveloped them, an echo of reverence, waiting for the dawning of that seventh day, a day they knew would mark the beginning of victory. Through the toil of marching and the steadfastness of faith, some began to remember the significance of the stones they had placed in the riverbed, the words echoing in their hearts. "Tell them of how the Lord delivered us." Joshua 4:6. This was a story woven into their identity as God's chosen people, and on that day they would become more than wanderers. They would be conquerors, establishing not merely a home, but a legacy built on the foundation of his promises. As the sun rose on the seventh day, Joshua gathered the leaders. "Prepare to shout, for the Lord has given us the victory." The air hum was vibrant with expectation. The sound of hearts pounding filled the land. But even amidst the excitement, a question lingered, unknown to many. How would God fulfill this promise? What divine strategy lay ahead as they prepared to raise their voices? As they gathered at the edge of the city, a sense of the unfolding mystery wrapped around them like a cloak. What more would come to light as they raised their voices in unison? What revelation awaited them as they stepped boldly into God's sovereign plan? As the sun's rays poured over the land, warming the hearts of the Israelites, Joshua stood firm before his assembly, the anticipation crackling in the air like the static before a storm. The silence was profound. The only sound was the gentle rustling of the priests' garments as they carried the Ark of the Covenant. Each heart beat in fervent expectation, a sacred rhythm synchronized with the heartbeat of the Almighty. "Listen," Joshua commanded, his voice rising above the stillness. "This day we shall shout with a great shout, for the Lord has given you the city." Joshua 6:16. The air thickened with anticipation as the warriors lined up in formation, their spirits ignited with fervent faith. Each footfall resounded with purpose, marking the sacred ground as they began their circumnavigation of Jericho. The towering walls stood like giants, mocking the frailty of human strength. Yet the words of their leader echoed in their hearts, seeds of confidence planted by the hand of God. On this seventh day they marched 7 times around the city, a prophetic act appointed by the Lord himself. With every circle, the tension grew, an electric charge of divine expectancy vibrating through the assembly. The priests blew their trumpets with precision, a melodious proclamation that cut through the air like a clarion call of heavenly hosts. When the time came, Joshua raised his hand, his heart aflame with the promise of God. "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." Joshua 6:16. In unison, The people of Israel raised their voices, a crescendo of faith that seemed to shake the very foundations of Jericho. The sound rolled forth, enveloping the city with its force. A divine decree echoed through the heavens. And at that moment, the ground trembled. The walls of Jericho, which had stood defiantly for generations, quaked beneath the power of God's command. Cracks appeared, spreading like a web of divine intent, until walls that had boasted of their strength crumbled as if they were made of mere dust. The Israelites, awestruck, beheld the miracle unfold before their very eyes. The tangible evidence of God's promise realized. The dust settled, and with it, a profound silence fell over the land, a holy hush that bore witness to the unfathomable power of the Lord. From the rubble, a new dawn emerged, a place where hope and faith had collided, giving birth to victory. Those who once felt the weight of uncertainty now stood firm, emboldened by the demonstration of God's faithfulness. "Praise be to the Lord," they declared, voices intertwined with shouts of joy and exuberance, fashioning a new legacy of worship. They descended into the city, claiming their inheritance, a land that flowed with milk and honey, a promise fulfilled. Yet amidst their triumph, Joshua's heart bore a quiet inquiry. Beneath the rejoicing, he sensed an undercurrent of divine mystery yet to be revealed. What of the Rahab? He pondered, recalling the Canaanite woman who sheltered the spies and declared, "For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath." Joshua 2:11. God's intricate weaving of narratives did not cease in their victory. It only deepened. As the dust of Jericho settled, a new chapter awaited, the unfolding of a sovereign plan, rich with the threads of redemption and grace. What more would the Lord reveal to his people? What future awaited them beyond the walls they now claimed? The hearts of the Israelites hungered for understanding as they stepped boldly forward, knowing their journey had only just begun. Now in the land of Jericho, amidst the ruins of defiance, the Israelites found themselves standing at the threshold of a new reality. Joshua, fervent in spirit, gathered the people in the heart of the city, where the dust of conquest mingled with the anticipation of God's next step. The glory of the Lord was palpably felt, and the promise of a covenant renewed hung in the air, vibrant and alive. "Remember the covenant of the Lord your God," Joshua spoke, his voice steady yet charged with reverence, "for it is he who has delivered us from the hand of our enemies, and it is by his grace we have entered this land." The assembly murmured in agreement, their hearts echoing the truth of their leader's proclamation. As the sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the remnants of Jericho, Joshua knew a reckoning was at hand. He summoned the 2 spies who had once tread the ground of Canaan and were intimately familiar with the ways of the enemy. "Come forth," he called, "for the Lord has directed our steps, and we must honor those who have helped us. What say you of the woman Rahab? Will she find grace amid our victory?" The spies stepped forward, their eyes glistening with remembrance. "Indeed, Lord," one began, his voice filled with compelling fervor. "Rahab the harlot stood firm in faith. She declared to us the awesome power of your God, saying, 'For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on earth beneath.'" Joshua 2:11. "We promised her safety. We must not falter in our oath." Joshua nodded, his heart stirred with compassion. "Gather the people and let us go to her house, for she has been a partaker in our salvation." In preparation, he sent men to ensure the safety of Rahab and her family, for it was her faithful heart that had awakened a divine plan. As the spies ventured forth, Joshua offered a prayer unto the Lord. "Thank you for your mercies which endure forever. Let your favor rest upon Rahab and her kin, that they may not face destruction like the city that fell." His words floated heavenward, mingling with the setting sun's final glow. When they arrived at Rahab's dwelling, they found her and her family in anxious anticipation. "Fear not," the spies comforted her. For we have come according to your promise. You and all you own shall be spared. For the hand of God has moved us to rescue you." With tears of gratitude, Rahab embraced them, deep faith radiating from her soul as she declared, "Truly, I have seen the power of your God, and I trust in his salvation." Together they returned to the gathering of Israel, and Joshua raised his voice in solemn declaration, "Here stands Rahab, the evidence of God's redemptive grace. Let her be grafted into our tribe, for Israel is a people of promise, and mercy triumphs over judgment." The people rejoiced, and they welcomed Rahab and her family warmly, a testimony of how God enfolds the lost into his abundant mercy. As night fell, a deep peace settled over the land, but Joshua remained in prayerful reflection. He sensed an unfolding mystery trailing after the victory, a question on the very lips of God waiting to be spoken. What destiny lies ahead, O Lord? What tale will be told through Rahab's lineage? In the stillness, the soft whisper of the divine gripped him. It was a reminder of God's grand design, stretching far beyond the present, deeper than mere conquest. Thus, Joshua stood poised at the beginning of a greater movement. The plan of God was stretching forth, hinting at a future where generations would rise in faith and fulfillment. What more would this new beginning reveal? The covenant promise echoed in his heart. "Out of her, a great lineage shall bear witness to my faithfulness." And with that, the veil of God's sovereign mystery hung tantalizingly, opening a horizon of promises yet to unfold. "The Lord's chosen servant, for a new command is upon us." The dawn broke gently over the land, the sun's rays illuminating the faces of the people gathered around Joshua. There, in the wake of triumph, anticipation blossomed anew as they prepared to embark upon their next conquest. "Arise, for the Lord has spoken," Joshua declared, lifting his gaze to the heavens. "We shall take the city of Ai, for the land is ours by divine decree." The people filled with fervor, remembering the faithfulness of God in their pursuit of his promise. Yet Joshua's heart swelled not only with resolve, but with a weighty caution as well. For he had been shown that the Lord blesses the obedient, and the disobedient are met with judgment. In the gathering shadows of the city gates, Joshua summoned the warriors, choosing his men faithfully. "Let us send forth a company of 3,000, for small is the number required when we walk in the favor of God." His words resonated, strengthening the hearts of the Israelites. Yet deep within, Joshua pondered the importance of unwavering faithfulness in the eyes of God. As the men set forth toward Ai, a tension rippled through the ranks. Among them were those who had witnessed the fall of Jericho, and yet some bore the weight of scornful doubt amidst the jubilance of victory. Little did they know that the shadow of sin lay among them, tightly woven into the very fabric of their covenant. Day turned to night, and the warriors returned disheartened, deflated by defeat. "O Joshua, we have been cast down," one of the men lamented, dismay weighing heavily upon him. "Ai has repelled us, and their hearts emboldened, knowing not of your great power." A sudden dread seized Joshua's heart. Without delay, he fell before the Lord, his face pressed against the ground in abject humility. "O God, what has happened?" he cried out, his voice trembling with fear. "Why has this nation turned to shame? Were you not with us?" Then the Lord spoke with clarity and purpose, his voice echoing through the wilderness. "Israel has sinned. They have taken of the accursed thing, and thus I cannot stand with you in battle." The proclamation imbued Joshua with a profound urgency. He understood that obedience was the pathway to victory, yet the path had been sullied by transgression. "Consecrate the people, bring forth the clan," Joshua proclaimed resolutely. "Let us seek the truth, for the Lord shall not hide his face from us." The assembly gathered, hearts quickened with anticipation and dread. They knew the weight of sin could turn favor into fury in the blink of an eye. As the clans stepped forward, Joshua echoed the words of the Lord, invoking his holy judgment. By lot shall we discern who among us has turned from him, for his sovereignty demands justice, and purity must be restored. Finally, the lot fell upon Achan, whose heart quaked with terror as he stood exposed before the assembly, burdened by guilt. "I have sinned against the Lord," he confessed, tears streaming down his face, "for I coveted the accursed treasure and took it for myself." The realization settled heavily among the people, a collective gasp resonating from their midst. God's divine order had been disrupted, a sacred call to obedience distorted. Joshua's heart ached for Achan, yet he understood that God's kingdom could not stand on compromised ground. "Bring forth the treasures," Joshua commanded with a heavy heart. And as the accursed items were laid bare, it was a stark reminder of the cost of disobedience and the grace still to be extended through judgment. In that somber moment, the assembly understood. Sin had consequences, but the mercy of God was still extended. The covenant could be renewed through repentance and restoration. They saw not only the gravity of their actions, but also a grace that beckoned for redemption. And so, as Achan was dealt with in the sight of the Lord, a significant truth gripped Joshua's spirit. The greater plan of God was unfolding through this very trial. What lies ahead, O sovereign God? From whom shall salvation spring? For within the unfolding mystery remained the promise of grace, renewing itself even in the face of judgment, unveiling a future where Jesus Christ, the ultimate Redeemer, would emerge from such perilous lineages. What greater purposes resided in the heart of God, concealed in his boundless mercy? Come with me, for the path to victory is not through might, but through humility and obedience. The voice of the Lord beckoned to Joshua once more, resonating deep within his spirit. With the congregation of Israel still hushed in solemnity, Joshua retreated to the sacred space of prayer, yearning for further guidance from the Almighty. The fierce weight of Achan's sin rested heavy upon him. He felt both the pull of divine favor and the sting of disobedience. "O God of our fathers, remember your covenant with us. We seek your face, not in our strength, but in our weakness," he implored. As Joshua prayed, the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the hills of Ai. The Lord's voice broke through the tranquil dawn like a trumpet call filled with authority. "Joshua, rise. I have laid a plan before you. Gather the people and prepare them for the next battle, for I shall deliver Ai into your hands. But heed this command. You must devote all that belongs to them to destruction, for their iniquity has reached its fullness." "Ai shall be ours," Joshua proclaimed, his heart rekindled with strength and renewed purpose. He stood before the elders and the tribes, eyes gleaming with divine fervor. "Prepare yourselves, for the Lord has spoken. No longer shall we waver, for he is with us. We shall approach Ai with valor, casting aside all doubts. Our sin has been purged." The hearts of the men quickened at Joshua's words, a spirit of courage washing over them as they assembled under his command. They sharpened their swords, clad themselves in armor, and strapped sandals upon their feet, ready to march into the fray. However, even amidst this fervent atmosphere, Joshua paused, sensing a holy stillness pressing around him. "But before we charge forth in battle," he said, raising his hand, "let us sanctify ourselves once more. Let the leaders come forth. Let us seek the Lord's favor anew in humility." Thus they gathered, laying their hands on the altar of the Lord, each one confessing, repenting, and acknowledging their reliance upon divine grace. The air was thick with their prayers, ascending to the heavens, mingling with the fire of their supplications. As the final heart was offered, the Lord spoke clearly. "Fear not, for I shall deliver you not only from Ai, but from the blemish of sin. Go forth. I will send a terror into Ai's hearts, and they shall be vanquished before you." Encouraged and united beneath God's promise, Joshua rallied the troops. "We will encircle the city, drawing them into a false confidence, relying again on the guidance of the Lord. For their very arrogance shall be their destruction. We shall set an ambush before the gates and signal our victory." With one accord, the people affixed their gaze upon Joshua. The plan was set, and the time had come. They marched toward Ai, drawing nearer to the city that once bore them ill fortune. At the threshold, a silent anticipation stirred among them, a time-honored dread and joy infusing their steps. But as they approached, unseen from the walls of Ai, a profound whisper echoed within Joshua's heart. "What means this victory? Whose hearts truly turn to me?" As the sun dipped low, signaling their readiness, Joshua drew his sword. "The Lord who leads us is a consuming fire. He fights our battles and lays our paths straight," he declared. Then, as they set forth into the fray, an unshakable promise clung to Joshua's soul. Within the confines of every clash, every dust-filled moment, there lay not merely a conquest of land, but a revelation of God's unyielding mercy, beckoning even the hardest of hearts toward his open arms. But unbeknownst to the warriors and onlookers of Israel, an unseen battle raged, a contest not just for a city, but for the very soul of a nation, positioning their destinies on the precipice of divine intervention. For in the sacred weave of time, a greater unfolding awaited. Could it be, O Lord, that this first battle is but a shadow of a far greater victory concealed in your holy plan? What will emerge from these trials, even as the sun sets on this day? Joshua pondered, eyes fixed on Ai, the destiny of his people hanging in the balance. "Come with me!" Joshua's heart surged as he called forth the men of Israel, gathering them like the scattered sheep returning to the fold. "Today we take our stand against Ai, not in doubt, but in unwavering faith." The assembly echoed with the fervent cries of men, their faith ignited by the promise of the Lord. With the sun casting long shadows behind them, Joshua divided the armed men into two companies. One company, strong and valiant, would approach the city from the west, while the other, smaller in number but fortified by divine purpose, would position themselves in ambush to the east. "Let the enemy believe they find a vulnerable foe," Joshua instructed, a glint of divine strategy illuminating his eyes. "But they shall witness the mighty hand of God at work." As the troops set forth, the air was thick with expectation, each step stirring the dust of a promise, each sword raised in the anticipation of victory. The elders cried aloud the Psalms of David, praising the God who had delivered them from the hand of Pharaoh and now prepared their hearts for conquest. Arriving at the outskirts of Ai, the Israelite fighters gazed upon the imposing walls of the city, fortified with fierce dedication. But the Lord had promised to instill fear within their hearts. Such was the beginning of their undoing. Joshua raised his sword aloft, a symbolic gesture of trust toward the heavens. "O Lord of hosts, we march in your name. Grant us favor as we stand against this city blighted by sin." Then, just as the sun began to arch in the firmament, casting its radiant glory over the land, a mighty shout arose from the ranks of Israel. The men of Ai, perceiving the Israelites closing in, surged forth in arrogance, ready to defend their home. Yet, like the waves of the sea, they could not foresee the turning tide of God's retribution unfolding before them. As the troops of Ai pursued the fleeing warriors, an illusion orchestrated by Joshua's command, those hidden in ambush awaited with bated breath. "Now!" Joshua cried, and the concealed warriors surged from their stronghold. The clash of swords rang in the air, and the echo of divine justice resonated against stone and spirit. For in this moment of chaos, the promise of the Lord unfurled like a banner of victory. The city walls trembled under the might of Israel's unified front. And the cries of "Aye" shifted from triumph to terror. God's hand smote their valor, sending confusion among their ranks. With fervent hearts driven by divine purpose, Joshua's men pressed forward, the ground beneath their feet a testament to God's promise and faithfulness. In the heart of the battling tide, Joshua beheld the overwhelming destruction wrought as the defenders of Ai faltered before the might of Israel. "See, the Lord fights for us," he shouted, invoking the memory of what the Almighty had enacted by the sea. But as the last foe fell and the smoke of battle cleared, a stillness enveloped the land, heavy with victory, yet punctuated by an ominous whisper. Joshua, momentarily breathless, felt a tremor pass through his spirit. "O God, what lies ahead for your people now? For even amid our triumph, shadows linger." He knelt upon the scorched earth, lifting his eyes to the heavens, longing for understanding. Is this valley where blood has spilled merely a prelude to a greater calling? What will become of this victory, O Lord? The sun shed its final light upon the land, but the dawn of revelation loomed before him, cloaked in divine mystery. As he pondered deep within his heart, the silent promise began to stir. A new covenant emerges from this season of conquest, a foretelling wrapped in shadows and light. There lay ahead the promise of a land filled with both challenge and blessing, beckoning his people forward. And so, with hearts afire and destinies yet to unfold, Joshua stood poised for what divine intervention awaited before the horizon of God's bigger plan beckoned their every step onward. As the morning sun rose over the land that flowed with milk and honey, a renewed spirit swept through the camp of Israel. Joshua, now seasoned by battles fought and victories won, stood before the people with a heart full of purpose. "Today we gather," he proclaimed, his voice steady and resolute, "for the Lord has commanded us to dwell in this land, a gift of grace given to our forefathers. Let us not forget the covenant we hold, for the God who led us through wilderness and wave pursues a greater destiny for his children." The Israelites, filled with a sense of belonging, assembled around their leader, their hearts echoing the rhythms of divine promise. The echoes of triumph from their victories at Jericho and Ai rang in their minds, reminding them of God's unwavering faithfulness. Yet amidst their celebration, a new chapter loomed, a call to unite as one people, to fully embrace the land they had fought so hard to attain. "Choose this day whom you will serve," Joshua urged, a solemn charge hanging in the air, "for the destinies of our children and their children depend upon our devotion to the Lord our God." He understood that true success in the Promised Land was not merely military conquest, but a pursuit of righteousness embedded in covenant trust. As the days turned into weeks, the Israelites settled in, occupying cities, cultivating lands, and establishing their tribes across the expanse. Yet Joshua knew that prosperity would bring its own set of trials. He had seen the seeds of obedience twist into shadows of disobedience, a spectre threatening to unravel all that they had attained. One evening, as the stars emerged in luminous clusters, Joshua called the leaders of the tribes for a gathering. "We must remember," he said, his voice low yet commanding, "that our strength rests not in our might, but in our covenant with God. Let us teach our children of his wondrous acts and the power of remembrance." With a solemnity that pierced the stillness of the night, he continued, "The land before us flourishes not by our labor alone, but by his hand. We will set stones of remembrance, markers that declare to the generations to come, 'Here is where the Lord has led us.'" And so they did. Teams of families and leaders ventured through the land, placing stones at pivotal sites, the mountains where the plagues once weighed heavy upon Egypt, the valleys where the Jordan had split, and the plains where countless victories were won. Each stone stood as a testament to God's intervention and a challenge to future generations not to forget the foundations upon which they stood. Then came a day like no other. As the sun blazed high, Joshua summoned all the tribes to gather at Shechem. "Come, listen well," he urged them, the fervor in his voice carrying an urgency that could not be denied. "For today we stand before the Lord, not only as individuals, but as his people united by promise. Remember the good works he has done for us." With a heart ablaze with the fire of remembrance, Joshua recounted their history: the deliverance from Egypt, the crossing of the Red Sea, the long walks through the wilderness, and the monumental victories given by the hand of God. He reminded them of Rahab, too, the Canaanite woman whose faith had intertwined with their own, showing that mercy is extended beyond the borders of bloodlines. As he concluded, the effects of his words rippled through the ranks of the Israelites, stirring in them a deep sense of devotion. "Now, I ask you again, choose whom you will serve. Will you be faithful to the one who has carried us, or will you turn to the gods of the lands we occupy?" In unison they responded, "Far be it from us to forsake the Lord." The echoes of their voice rang clear, resolving within them a shared conviction, a pact forged in the fires of faith. Together they sealed their commitment, drawing from the pages of their past to ink the story of their future. As the gathering dispersed, a holy quiet enveloped Joshua's heart. He felt the whispers of eternity calling him forward, the realization that his role was not merely as a general, but as a steward of faith to the people of God. He understood his journey had been a preparation for the next generation, a legacy passing from his hands to theirs. And as he prepared to lay down his own earthly mantle, a deep peace settled over him. Joshua knew that God's promise was not constrained by his lifetime. It was a tapestry stretching through ages, weaving tales of redemption, grace, and continual new beginnings. As he looked out upon the land that now belonged to a new generation, a sense of divine fulfillment surged within him. He envisioned a time coming when the legacy of faith would echo from these stones, as children of the covenant would arise, knowing they were called by God, destined for divine purpose. The sun dipped low on the horizon, illuminating a path through the land of promise, a reminder that God's faithfulness endures throughout the ages, as he beckons every heart to trust, to walk, and to believe in his unshakable plan. As we close this chapter of divine narrative, let us remember that the stories of our lives intertwine with God's purpose. Each testimony is a stone of remembrance, stirring faith in those who follow. Now is the time. Don't forget what the Lord has done. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word. If this story has touched your spirit, leave a like now to help spread God's truth through the algorithm. We want to hear your reflections. Comment on how this account has impacted your faith. And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. Let us carry his message forth into all the corners of the earth.